Does that mean this movie is a flop? In the strictest sense of the words, in terms of looking at the box office, it did not make its money back at the box office, but that's not how Warner Brothers is looking at it. And Warner Brothers does not do their secondary and tertiary lines of distribution, meaning post-theatrical, in the same manner that the Walt Disney Company does. Warner Brothers has even been licensing out the DC library to Netflix, but the one that isn't going to collect any more money, the one that definitely is a flop, that has nowhere else to go, that is not selling any toys, is this movie right here.
Renegade Online.
Superman and Fantastic Four. And this is probably going to be one of the last conversations we have on these two films because they're pretty much done. We got news a few days ago that Warner Brothers was going to pull the chain on this one in terms of going to PVOD 10 days earlier than it was originally slated to, at 45 days, right? I felt like bad idea. I still do. Short-term gain, long-term loss. Why tell your audience out there? Why train your audience to just kind of sit tight, right? There's two sides to this argument. We talked about it Wednesday. One side to the argument is strike while the iron's hot. Go to PVOD early while you still have a lot of marketing capital that is out there in social media, right? The movie has not busted any records. The movie has not covered all the costs of production and marketing, right? It's about $50 million net shy, meaning that, like we said before, this movie probably needed to get close to $700 million to cover the cost. But James Gunn said that was bullshit. Okay, we explained this already. I think part of the reason James Gunn was saying that is because internally on the books, on studios like Warner Brothers, they have other sources of ancillary revenue that they project besides the box office. Figures, like exact figures that we'll never see unless the studio actually puts them out there, which is rare. Part of that is the PVOD stuff, right? We talked about before how Universal was able to scoop up about $100 million in net income from PVOD sales of Wicked. Now, Wicked finished with about $750 million, if I'm not mistaken, from last year. So they're hoping that, hey, if Superman can even do half of that, if Superman can pull $50 million in on PVOD, we're good, right? Everything beyond that and down the road is gravy. So that's one side. Not to mention the fact, as we told you Wednesday on the show, that part of this movie and part of the cost and revenue allocation is coming from recently renewed licensing contracts with Mattel. From Mattel, for the guys who have the license to create DC toys. So that's, when Warner Brothers came in back, I think they renewed it in early 23. They renewed the contract again early this year. Part of that, and of course, these things take years. You have to get years in advance. You have to get in line years ahead of time. If you're saying, hey, we're going to have a new line or a new set of movies with Superman, Supergirl, this character, that character, they don't just start making these things a few months before the movies come out. They have to get into a queue years in advance. So theoretically, in early 2023, and we showed you all the article, y'all go Google it, see for yourself, where Warner Brothers, DC, and Mattel re-signed a contract in 2023, a big part of that contract, and that was they probably paid more money than they did the last time they signed a contract, because they knew Warner Brothers was going to start making new stuff. And part of the reason, whether you like it or not, that I think they made the Superman film clearly much more geared towards younger audiences is because they wanted to sell toys. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it is what it is. This was the decision. So part of what James Gunn talks about where, hey, we don't need $700 million to make our money back is because he's not just looking at box office. If we were just looking at box office, which we typically do here because that's all we've got public data on a consistent basis, that it needs $700 million. Now, it's going to finish up a little north of $600 million. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about $650, which I think was definitely in the range. The problem is, of course, then they started announcing the release of PVOD. And that is going to suppress some of that box office and keep it from probably getting up to where they originally were thinking it was going to be a couple of 2 or 3 weeks ago. Okay, fine. Can PVOD make up the gap? Probably so. That being said, I still don't like this because, like I said before, this trains audiences to curtail their theatrical behavior. Right? Now, if you're one person right now, right? Because Superman doesn't have PLFs anymore. They don't have IMAX anymore. They haven't had those for a couple of weeks. Your average Superman ticket right now on Sunday, August 17th is probably something like $13 or $12. Still a good bit of money compared to years ago. If you go in the daytime, you get a discount. You go on Discount Tuesday or something like that. Maybe you're getting in for less than $10 in the middle of the day. Granted. So if right now you got Superman on PVOD for $29.95, even when you take out Amazon and Apple's, say, average 25% takedown, 30% in the case of Apple, right? You're still walking away with about $20 a copy. That's at least 2 tickets to Superman right now. So this is, and again, I'm trying to get into the head of the distribution people. And I will remind folks yet again, James Gunn, with this story about, well, they wanted it to come out. They didn't know the release schedule for Peacemaker Season 2. And they wanted this movie to come out on PVOD before Peacemaker Season 2 started. Whatever. The bottom line is, again, for y'all out there that think I'm trying to sit here and defend James Gunn to the ends of the earth, no. But we call it like we see it. The ultimate situation here is that J.B. Perrette is the head of distribution at Warner Brothers. J.B. Perrette is the man who makes the decisions as far as when things hit on streaming, as far as when things hit on PVOD. James Gunn could have called him and said, hey, I want this to happen. But J.B. Perrette could have said no. But he did it. So if you want to blame somebody for this movie coming out early, we've got to be fair. As big a fan as J.B. Perrette as I am, ultimately this decision is on J.B., okay, to bring this out early. Does that mean this movie is a flop? In the strictest sense of the words, in terms of looking at the box office, I guess, sure, you could say it was a flop. It did not make its money back at the box office. But that's not how Warner Brothers is looking at it. And Warner Brothers does not do their secondary and tertiary lines of distribution, meaning post-theatrical, in the same manner that the Walt Disney Company does. That's why we look at these differently, right? Warner Brothers has even been licensing out the DC library to Netflix. Because we saw them on Netflix. They popped up there 6-7 months ago. So they're collecting money from third parties. But the one that isn't going to collect any more money, the one that definitely is a flop, that has nowhere else to go, that is not selling any toys, not doing anything for the merchandising contract with Hasbro in this case, is this movie right here. I don't care if you thought it was good. There's nowhere left for this to go. There really isn't.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.